and having faith that new and better things are on their way and making them happen. Well, let's get back to love. So, you have the love. Well, you have the love in your family, and you love your family, but there's something else too. There's another kind of love. There's the love for another person in a romantic sense. Well, that's important too. And that could really consume us. And when things fail in that regard, it is important to have faith that things will work out. And it is important to be open to the possibility of a new relationship and be open to the possibility of a less than ideal person being your romantic lover. You're not necessarily going to get that perfect romantic lover. Sometimes you just got to compromise. Sometimes things fall short of your expectations, and you just have to settle for that. Anyway, so romantic love is very important. Well, what else is important too is even material love. Well, that's not necessarily true love, but it can approach it as we really love to do things and love to have things. Well, that might be all fine and dandy. Hobbies are important, and so it is important to have hobbies and to have something interesting to do. For we have to remember, we have to stand on our own and be a strong pillar spiritually and morally and entertainment wise to be able to keep ourselves going with fun activities so things don't get too boring. We have to have all of those pillars set in place even without the help of our lover or life partner. For you never know when things could go bad and suddenly we could be alone again. Of course, who you seek out in a romantic sense and why this person is important to you what makes them attractive to you. This is important. These qualities are important to the imaginary territories and determine which imaginary territory you are from. If you like someone's looks, someone's wealth, someone's cunning, their ability to fool people and deceive them into thinking they're someone who they're not, or you like how they're able to be a social climber, even if it means ruthlessly stepping on people, so to speak. If you appreciate such qualities and abilities, you're a Westerner. If you appreciate the qualities of someone who is more geared to you and being committed to a long-term relationship and attracted to you for who you are, that is, your personality, rather than your looks. And if also they appreciate your honesty and are honest themselves, that is, they don't put up fronts and deceive people or cause people to suffer for their gain, then they're more on the east side. And if that's who you're seeking, well, that's probably where you're from too, of course. If you're all confused about this, like most people, and you like a little bit of both, which is just fine, you're like most people in this central region. Anyway, typically I think I'm from the east side, sure, but everyone changes their imaginary territory from time to time, literally from thought to thought, motivation to motivation, decision to decision, sure. Of course, sometimes we end up on one imaginary territory most of the time than another. But this varies somewhat. Anyway, with this imaginary territories comes, the sense of justice and what is expected out of justice, which of course varies with this situation and the imaginary territory you're from. Unfortunately, justice in the real world is often not there. That's something too I learned. You may think you'll get the justice. You may think that someone has truly wronged you, and surely they're going to pay the price. Guess what? They don't always have to, and they don't always do pay the price. Sometimes they get away with it. And I guess vice versa, sometimes you get away with it, and I get away with it. That is doing something horrible, well, or at least not that nice, and not having to pay the price. Because sometimes there is no justice, but sometimes there's no other things too. Sometimes there's no respect. Sometimes there's no recognition, even for the hardest efforts that have taken you forever. Sometimes they just simply go unappreciated. Sometimes there's no courtesy, and so on and so on. You can't always expect these qualities. You could try to emanate them. It's nice to be respectful of others and recognize their accomplishments and be courteous and kind to them. It's best to do that as much as you can. The problem is, you can't always expect it in return, and you shouldn't be upset when people fall short of this, especially if it's in a slight, minor way. Anyway, so another word to deal with is trends. Do you follow them or not really? Well, if you're a trendy person and follow the latest trends, often, not always, but often you're all from the West Side. It depends what you do with your trendiness and how you use it or exploit it, and if other people pay the price or cannot fairly compete with you because you are more trendy. If you allow for that or believe in such principles, you might be more from the West Side. If you like your trendiness but believe in fairness and fair competition for all, that is, in the romantic sense, even for those non-trendy participants, then you might just be a trendy East Side person. They're out there. You just don't always see them that much. Anyway, so, the trends to follow or not to follow. Well, sure, it's great to follow them. But the problem is, it might be too expensive or too difficult. And there's always bound to be disappointments as things change and trends change and people change. So with all this changing, sometimes it's best not to follow trends and just be independent. Then you're not disappointed when trends change. So that's probably where I come from more, not following the trends. It just seems such a lot of work, often for nothing, when there's other things to focus on, other things that might be more important, more substantial, more real, and more true than the latest trend. So you have to step back from that, the latest trend, the latest game, the latest activity, and look for something real, something deep, like love, family,